point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 536th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell. And Tom is
in the flesh, but not in the studio.
Tom is not in the studio. He's in the flesh, and he stays home these days. Anyway, time for us to do Energy Week. And we are working on reports starting on the 10th of August, which is a Thursday, and they will continue until yesterday. Today being the 17th of August, they will go from the 10th to the 16th. And as I have said many, many, many times, I'm allowed to repeat that a couple of times because this is our 536th show. I've lost my cursor, which is why I'm bumbling. There you go. The show is taken in news items from my blog. The blog is called geoharvey.com. We put together a set of usually 3 items every day, which is the case for this week, which means we've got 21 items, and they are put together at a website which you can go to. The address for those who are watching this on computers is below on the screen. You can scroll down to it. There's also a file you can download which has the same information, and in both cases they've got live links, as does the blog. Things are a little bit more difficult to find on the blog because if you know that something is happening on Thursday, August 10th, you can click on the Thursday, August 10th on the calendar at the blog site, but you're going to have 15 items to look through to find the one that you want. Anyway, we're going to start the show with a picture of a solar roof, which is it's a concept of community solar power.
That's what it is. Yep.
Yeah. Did I say roof? I meant array. This is from Clean Technica.
Yeah, a bunch of guys got together and pooled their resources and put up a solar array.
Yeah. What do you have for a title?
Community Solar, panels without a roof to put them on.
There you go. As the cost of solar decreases each year, all forms of solar are within reach of more people. One form, community solar, is growing especially fast. According to the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, capacity has grown by 121% year over year since 2010.
That's year over year.
121% per year. That's not 21%, which is fast growth. This is amazing growth. And what that means is that I forget what the number is, 60,000 times what it was or something like that in 2010. Yeah.
Well, the last sentence is that trend is expected to continue.
Yeah. How they can do that? Well, if you live in an apartment and you don't have access to or just in a building you're renting, and you don't have access to land that you can put your own solar array on, you can get together with a bunch of guys, as Tom said earlier, and just decide that you're going to put up a solar array, and it'll belong to the bunch of you.
And you either take your profit in watts, or you take your profit in dollars.
Yeah, and this picture, let me put the picture back up. The picture shows the Brooks family has 2 panels, and Debbie Jones has 1, and Jasper Wright has 1. There are solar arrays that are actually put together in that way, where Each person is assigned a particular panel or a group of panels that are theirs. But solar arrays in community solar can also be everybody gets a share or 2 shares or 3 shares without saying it's that particular panel. Yeah. So
well, these things supposedly they have a profit, and the profit can be in the form of money,
yes,
or in the form of energy.
Right. That's the whole point. So, have you said everything you want to say, Tom?
I think so.
Okay. We'll
Let's
go
move
on.
along here and look at a funny-looking amphitheater, only it's not an amphitheater.
This is a school. It's the Rajkumari Ratnavati School, girls' school, and this is in a North Indian desert town of Jaisalmer, where the temperatures can reach 120 degrees at the height of summer. And this school was built to be cool.
They don't explain that. At least I didn't look at the article, but they didn't explain how they were built to be cool.
Well,
but interesting looking school, though. I mean, they're totally contained. They got their own individual playground in the middle.
Yes, and they have. There are a bunch of things going on here. One of the things is you'll notice that school isn't round; it's elliptical, and it's sited in such a way that it catches the wind that's going by, and the wind helps keep it cool.
I'm glad you explained that because the article didn't explain well enough.
Yeah, and by the way, this article came from CNN. And there are a bunch of other things that the architect, who is in New York, a woman named Diana Kellogg, as I mentioned, she was using traditions from this part of the world to build that school. So
they know what to do.
Yeah, and she's looking into things like geothermal mass. She's not getting geothermal energy from down into the soil, but she is interested in geothermal mass, cooling this thing off. Another thing, and it's kind of hard to tell this, but on the right side of the school, if you look closely, you can see that there's a a solar array, which is providing the school with its electricity. Another thing, it's really hard to see. And another thing that I find interesting,
like a running track on the roof.
Yeah, but it's just on the right side of the school as we see it. There's a solar array, and then another thing that I find interesting about this is that on the very left side of the picture, almost halfway up, but not quite that much, you will see that there is a round hut with a conical roof, which is apparently the standard living quarters of people in this part of the world.
Okay.
So, just as a matter of interest. Okay, should we go on?
Can't dance.
Our next item.
Can't scroll either. Come on, here we go.
Our next item is from CNN.
That was a nice picture of the Grand Canyon.
Isn't that a nice picture?
It is a nice picture.
Yeah. Okay, what do you got for a title?
Extreme heat will make the Grand Canyon visits dramatically more risky in the future.
Yeah, extreme heat fueled by climate change will significantly increase the risk of heat-related illness for people who visit the Grand Canyon National Park each year. A National Park Service study found this concluded this in a study that they had. The increase could be 137% by the year 2100 in a worst-case scenario, which means that if they have 100 people a year getting sick because of heat, they'd have 237 in that worst-case scenario. So
what you're telling us is it's getting hot there.
Oh, when was it not hot over the course of a year at the Grand Canyon?
Well, I should say hotter then.
Yeah, hotter, I would say. Okay, we'll go to our next picture. This
looks like a kid with a big surprise.
Yeah, and a caption I put in saying, "You mean they're lying?" Okay. This little
They
boy.
wouldn't lie to it. They wouldn't do a thing like
No,
that.
they wouldn't do a thing like that. This is from The Guardian. So
Videos denying climate change science approved by Florida as state curriculum. Now that's ridiculous.
yeah, videos that compare climate change activists to Nazis, portray solar and wind power as environmentally ruinous,
That's ridiculous.
and claim that global heating is part of a natural long-term cycle will be made available to young school children in Florida after they were approved for use in public schools. You know, we're going to have some more about states and how states are doing things later on in the show, and it'll be something that'll be a whole lot less annoying than this. Let me put it that way.
Somebody's paying somebody off to say that.
Oh man, I'll tell you. Yeah, but the thing is, I'm going to put that picture back up again. This little guy is going to grow up, we hope, and when he does, he's going to grow into a world in which climate change is more obvious than it is today.
Yep.
And he's going to remember that somebody told him it wasn't so. And who is that person going to be? It's going to be people like conservative Republicans, Ron DeSantis and so forth. And is he going to blame them? This is I think, what you would call politically suicidal.
You mean they're lying? They wouldn't do a thing like that.
No, they wouldn't do that. This is extremely unwise from a political point of view. They may actually believe that climate change is not happening. I don't know. But they didn't do the research. I think this is going to be ruinous for the conservatives. And
I think in the long run it will be, because people are going to see through it eventually.
I think, you know, conservatives are starting to see that climate change is real already. They're already doing that. There are very few of them who are saying that it isn't real. Or that
Well, one of the biggest problems is stranded assets. I mean, they're stuck with them and they don't know what to do about
yeah,
it.
we'll talk about stranded assets too. But, you know, we're in a position where we're trying to protect our finances by denying that they're being threatened by something.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. Okay, let's go on.
Get this.
I like the kid, but I don't like the story. Okay.
This is an interesting picture of a storm.
Yeah, isn't it? I always loved lightning until I got struck.
That's struck, huh?
I was walking up my basement stairs, and lightning hit the house that I was in, and it went down the chimney and jumped into lolly column and water pipes, and eventually went through my legs as I was walking up the basement stairs. But that was I got to tell you, that was weird lightning.
I was standing about 5 feet from a building that got hit, but it didn't hit me at all.
Yeah, it didn't hurt me, but the lightning it did hit an ash tree and blew it up.
I bet it startled you a little bit.
That startled me a little bit, although I remember it happening, and then the next thing I remember, I was at the top of the stairs. So there's about 3 or 4 seconds that I don't remember there. And when I got to the top of the stairs, I opened the door, and there was my brother, and he was all excited, and he said, "You should have seen what I just saw." Because he saw the lightning come down the chimney and jump into the washing machine.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, that's kind of impressive. But
Well, this comes to us from CNN.
yes, that's right.
And it's called, and I quote, "Ocean heat is off the charts. So where are hurricanes?"
Okay, ocean heat is off the charts to begin with. Let's just stop there for a second and reflect on that kid that we were just looking at. It's already off the charts, and they're telling him that it isn't happening. Okay. Forecasters warn a change is coming. Record ocean heat has set the stage for an active Atlantic hurricane season, but so far we've had no storms. There have
Don't worry, they're coming.
what? They're
Don't
coming.
worry, they're
Yeah.
coming.
There have been no tropical storms in the Atlantic basin in nearly a month, and none has come close to the United States. That could soon change. And as a matter of fact, Tom, right now there is a storm, and I don't remember the name. I think maybe it's Maria, but it's not in the Atlantic. It's in the Pacific, and it's headed straight for San Diego.
Oh, boy.
Now, there have only been something like 8 tropical storms that have hit California in the last, I don't know how long, in recorded history, I guess, and never a full-scale hurricane. The National Hurricane Center says that this storm will hit well below hurricane level, although it'll be hurricane still about 100 miles from San Diego. So we may hear about that. That's an interesting one to me. Hurricanes have been hitting in ways that they never did before. I mean, about 50 years ago, or 40 years ago, there was a hurricane in the South Atlantic, and it was the first time in recorded history that there was ever a hurricane in the South Atlantic. And it hit Brazil.
Places like England and Ireland are starting to think about hurricanes now.
The next thing you know, we're going to read about a hurricane hitting Norway or Iceland or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow. I think Norway more likely than Iceland, because the Gulf Stream passes south of Iceland. The hurricane would have to go over it. Okay.
That's this week.
Huh?
That's this week.
That's this week, right. There you go. Okay. Our next item. We've looked at the storm. Storm was from CNN. We have a picture of Proterra bus and a story from Clean Technica.
In a surprise move, Proterra files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection.
Yeah. In a statement, Proterra has voluntarily filed for protection under Chapter 11 of the U.S. Bankruptcy Code in the District of Delaware in an effort to strengthen its financial position through a recapitalization and going concern sale. The firm said it will continue to operate.
They're not really in the kind of trouble it might look like they are.
When you say somebody goes into bankruptcy or a business goes into bankruptcy, the first thing that pops in the mind of most people, including myself, is that business is going to cease operating. And in this case, Proterra is trying to stay in operation, either as an independent, recapitalized company, or as a dependent company, so that some other company could go in and buy them up.
So they're basically trying to stay in business.
They're trying to stay in business. The fact of the matter is, the business that they're in is a business that is growing by leaps and bounds. It is.
That's why they want to stay in it.
What?
That's why they want to stay in it.
Exactly. The business, this particular business was basically nearly well, it wasn't nearly destroyed. It was prevented from really growing up in the United States by American policy at just the moment that it was growing by leaps and bounds in China. And, it was a little less than 2 years ago, I found an article online saying that Bloomberg had done an inventory of electric buses in the United States and found something like 650 of them. I don't remember. It was less than 700. And
These are the communist Chinese to show the capitalists how to do things.
and that's what I was coming to. A couple of months after I found that there were 650 or so electric buses in the United States, I found an article that said that Bogota, Colombia, had ordered 702 of them from BYD. And that means that Bogota had ordered more electric buses than Bloomberg had found in the entire United States. One city in Latin America had ordered more electric buses than there were in the entire United States in one
Now,
order.
that's pretty interesting.
And they were very confident about this. You know why? It's because they already had 700 of them, and they were finding that they were really cheap to run.
Well, you save an awful lot on maintenance.
You save an incredible amount of money on maintenance, but they had made a deal with BYD. BYD had not sold them any batteries. They were leasing the batteries from BYD.
That's a new trend.
Yeah, and what that meant was that they were paying for the batteries on a mile per mile basis. And that was cheaper than buying gasoline.
Wow.
And the buses were cheaper than regular buses when the battery wasn't included.
Yes, of course they were, yeah.
And in the United States, we were doing nothing on electric buses for a very good reason. And that is we were spending a huge amount of money doing fracking. And we had lots of natural gas.
Well, it seems like fracking isn't what they're expecting.
No, it wasn't.
Fracking is coming far short of anticipation.
And because we were going after fossil fuels, our electric buses were not selling. So,
Yeah.
you know, there you go. Now, I'm not going to say who to blame it on.
Somebody's paying somebody, that's for sure.
Yeah. I'm not going to say who to blame it on because you already know. Okay.
Let's move on to Saturday, the 12th of August.
There we go. Thank you for the date. We have a picture of Cordoba, Alaska, or Cordoba, Alaska, however they want to pronounce it, and an article from Clean Technica.
Pretty looking town.
It is, isn't it? For Alaska, it's a big city. It's about a 10th or a 12th of the size of Brattleboro. Which,
It's considered a big city, huh?
yeah, it's a big city in Alaska. It's 2,500 people or 2,000 people, something. I don't know. Fifth or a sixth of the size of Brattleboro. Maybe a quarter. I don't know. But it's not 3,000 people, I can tell you that. Anyway, this is an item from Clean Technica.
And it says, and I quote, Cordova and NREL push the envelope of microgrid design.
Yeah, now NREL is the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Cordova, like so many other cities in Alaska, is not connected to a larger energy grid.
That's interesting.
They just don't have a grid like that in Alaska like we have here. It's 2,700 residents. Well, why didn't I know that? Live in a microgrid that copes with earthquakes, tsunamis, avalanches, volcanic eruptions, and winter superstorms. We don't have problems like that around here, do we, Tom? Have you ever been through those things here? We've had a few bad winter storms and the leavings.
Yeah, we're definitely like that.
Yeah. Cordova is collaborating with NREL to create a model for microgrids. So they're making this into a research project, and I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so they're really working with a microgrid. They're trying to perfect it.
Yes, that's right. They want to have the perfect microgrid, and they're gonna come pretty close, I think. Should we go on?
Can't dance.
I knew you were going to say that. Okay, we have a very sad picture here of Lahaina, which is a city on the island of Maui in Hawaii. And this article came from...
That's been on the news.
Has it ever been in the news? This is from BBC.
Why weren't Maui residents warned sooner? Good question.
Yeah, good question. Local evacuations first took place on Tuesday. Then an announcement came that the flames were 100% contained. By Wednesday, however, fast-moving flames had engulfed Lahaina. Residents reported that strong winds knocked out communications systems hours before the fires arrived. But the thing is, I should point some stuff out about this picture. That white building that is pretty close to the middle is the old courthouse, and
Okay.
and it was gutted. It lost its roof altogether. It lost all of the insides. I think it must be a stone or brick building. But the interesting thing about this is immediately behind it, you see a very dark mass that looks like
Looks like a forest.
a forest. That isn't a forest, it's a tree.
A tree?
A tree,
Wow.
which covers 2/3 of an acre. That is the oldest banyan tree in the United States. And the way banyan trees grow, they have a trunk that comes up, then they have branches that go out from that. And these are big branches, but the branches go out horizontally. And the branches, the branches drop roots. And when the roots get to the ground, they root in the ground and they make new trunks. And this thing has got something like 17 trunks.
So it's one tree, but it's 17 trunks.
Yeah. And that one tree, as I said, covers 2/3 of an acre. It did get burned. But a scientist who looked at it studied what was going on under the bark, and he said all of the trunks, all of the small root systems coming down from above had living tissue under the bark. So even though the leaves are gone and the small twigs are all gone, there are leaves on it, but they're dead. Even though so much damage was done to it, the expectation is that there's a strong possibility, even a probability, that this tree will survive.
It's going to snap back.
It's going to come back, yeah. And he said that they could see that there was sap moving in it. It was moving very slowly. They've got trucks there that are drenching the ground, so the tree has plenty of water. You all right, Tom?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay. The other thing that I was going to say here is the wind and the fire knocked out the communication systems. That's possibly why they didn't get the warnings.
Uh-huh.
However, the people are furious at the power company because they kept the power on. And power lines were like, I don't know, they might have been shorting and so forth. But the power company kept the power lines on because they needed water to fight the fire. And to get the water, they had to operate pumps that were being operated from the electric grid. Now that didn't continue. But the thing is, if you want to envision this for a minute, there's a fire. The authorities tell you that the fire is 100% contained. The next day, with no alarm, you suddenly realize that that's not clouds that are coming along. That's smoke. And then there's embers, and then there's fire. And the fire was moving down the streets into this town at a speed of 60 miles per hour.
Wow.
You could not outrun this.
Outrun that.
You couldn't outrun it on a bicycle.
No.
I mean, and people died because they couldn't get away from it.
Yep.
So, this was devastating, and they're still finding bodies. And the whole thing was because of a drought in Hawaii. So, I mean, I shouldn't say the whole thing was because of the drought. The drought...
As I said before, this is being talked about on the local news, so this is big stuff.
This is big stuff. And the drought that enabled this fire to a very large extent. I don't know, the fire might have come without the drought, but the drought made it much worse. The drought was made much worse by climate change. So, and we have a thing, I forget
Climate change isn't happening, George.
Oh yeah, we should go back to that kid, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, well, thank you Florida educational systems. This is really bright. You know, I remember reading about an educational system that determined that the actual value of pi was 3.2.
Huh?
Yeah. This thing that you've learned about pi being 3.1416 or 14159,
Yeah.
wrong. It's 3.2. I think that was Kentucky.
Why?
Why? Because it's easier to remember.
Oh. Okay.
What can you say? All right. So we should probably move on to this next one. This is about carbon capture.
Well, it's a very interesting picture there.
Yeah.
Carbon capture right now is very expensive,
Yes.
but it is a solution, but it's got to get the prices down.
Yeah, it will. As more and more of it is installed, the price will go down. This is from Clean Technica.
The Department of Energy funds 2 direct air capture carbon removal projects.
Yeah. The DOE, Department of Energy, announced $1.1 billion in funding for 2 direct air capture projects, one in Texas, the other in Louisiana. The Washington Post reports they will be used to develop and test the machinery. In total, the Biden administration has earmarked $3.5 billion for United States direct air capture projects. And I want to tell you, I thought carbon capture was crazy until more recently I realized we're far too far along on climate change to assume that we're going to stop it by stopping emissions of carbon. And that being the case, even if we try as hard as we can to stop emitting carbon as fast as we can, we're not going to get there.
So you got to start taking it right out of the air.
That's right. Now, plant a tree, it's going to be effectively removing carbon every year starting 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Yeah, it's going to take about 20 years
We don't have that much time. The time that has been shot waiting to move on this has meant that the big trees, there are trees that we can plant that will grow very much faster. For example, river birch. A river birch tree that's 18 years old, it's probably at the end of its life because that's how long they lived. And you can draw down carbon immensely fast in using sphagnum, and the boglands draw down carbon very, very fast compared to trees. There are other ways of getting carbon drawn down very fast. In this particular case, they're looking at mechanical. Honestly, as far as I'm concerned, they should look at everything.
Well, they should look at everything, but these things are, right now at least, very expensive.
Yes, they are. That's why it's 1.1 billion out of 3.5 billion. If they weren't expensive, looking at that picture, I would say that doesn't look all that big to me.
Well, I think the bottom line is we should do all of these things.
Yeah, and the reason is because organizations with stranded assets are trying to prevent us from working.
Yep.
And honestly, I think they've killed people. They are killing people.
I think so.
And I think that they should be charged with that. Under the laws, I think should be changed so that if a capital enterprise kills somebody for money, which I think they may be doing.
I think so.
They may be doing. That organization should face the organizational equivalent of the death penalty.
Well, it is murder.
And what I'm saying is I think ExxonMobil should be forced to give up what it's doing, and the stockholders should be left with nothing.
That's one way of doing it.
That's the organizational death penalty. Maybe I'm just being hysterical about this. I don't know. But it's kind of a it's kind of a gut feeling for me. Okay, let's go on. Okay.
Yeah, let's move on. We see a picture of a electric car getting recharged.
We have that, don't we? It's amazing. This is from The Driven. That is the name of a publication.
I'll take your word for it.
What do you have for a title?
Why electric car tech could drive down power prices.
Yeah, what if every light in your house, along with your television, computer, smartphone, swimming pool, and all cleaning, cooking, and cooling appliances could be powered by one source? And what if you owned that source and the source was a battery on wheels parked in your garage?
In other words, your car.
Your car. The deal here is cars and trucks are starting to be produced. The Ford F-150 Lightning is a really good example that can power a house in the event of that there's a grid outage.
Well, they're selling pickup trucks that look like pickup trucks, but the whole trunk is in the front.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's selling them to contractors, and I think they even include a...
They have power outlets in them, so you
I was
can...
just going to say they include a power supply.
Yeah, they've got the power supply. All you've got to do is plug it into your house, and of course, that requires a little bit of work probably by an electrician, but that's not a big deal.
Well, they're looking at contractors too, so like his drills and his saws and all of that are all powered by his truck.
Yeah, and what happens? Well, if the truck can power your house, it can be one of the many trucks that powers the grid in the event that your local grid is suddenly without power.
Well, that'll take a little bit of doing, but it makes sense.
It's just a little bit of doing when you consider all together. Okay, I'm going to take us on to the next picture, and this is a picture of a boat called a Candela C8, and this is from Clean Technica.
This is interesting. That's the Golden Gate Bridge, by the way.
What's that?
That's the Golden Gate Bridge.
That's the Golden Gate Bridge. Look at that boat, Tom. Tell me how fast it's going.
I can't tell you that. How can I tell you that?
You can't.
It's going fast.
You know, I'll bet that boat is going to like 22 knots.
I know something of this company, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, this Candela, they don't make boats, so that's a brand new enterprise for them. But their big business is light boats.
Okay.
And they are the biggest distributor of light boats probably in the world, definitely in the United States.
Really? Amazing. Okay.
I used to do business with them. A long time ago, the post office put in a bunch of high-pressure sodium lamps in small village post offices, right over the door.
Now,
they give out a pure yellow light.
You know, Tom, we are way behind schedule here. We've got...
I won't tell a story, but the bottom line was I had to buy these bulbs from Candela.
Yeah, okay. What do you have for a title?
Taking flight with the Candela C8.
The Candela C8 is finally available for customers to purchase. Instead of a loud, inefficient combustion engine, the Candela C8 has a torpedo-shaped C-pod motor assembly. That's what's under the stern there. It is lifted out of the water on hydrofoils, one at the C-pod motor assembly and one with the two supports in front, for a smoother ride and about 80% less drag. It is super fast and super quiet.
I bet it is.
Super, super. Okay.
For what it's worth, the Candela is the luminous efficacy of the light of the visible spectrum near green, which is most easily seen by the human eye.
Okay. Remember that, everybody.
A common candle emits roughly 1 candela of luminous intensity.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, that's worth.
Our next item is from Clean Technica, and we have a picture of a hurricane.
Looks like that to me.
Yeah, you can see the eye there. This is Hurricane Dawn.
Whoops. I was just going to say what the title was.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Updated 2023 Atlantic hurricane season outlook increases prediction to above normal level activity. Well, it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, it hasn't happened yet, but as I said, there is a hurricane headed in the direction of California right now, southern California. It'll probably, it'll probably hit land in Baja California, just south of San Diego, but it'll no longer be a hurricane by then. Due to current ocean and atmospheric conditions, including record warm sea surface temperatures, we've talked about that a lot, NOAA's Climate Prediction Center has increased the prediction for the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season to an above normal level of activity. So now you know as much as I do.
Which isn't a whole heck of a lot.
Aw. Okay, we're up to Monday, August 14th.
We are, aren't we? We've got a picture of some wind turbines.
Yeah, let's look at that. Okay, this is from Canary Media.
How the U.S., no, not how. The U.S. passed a major climate law 1 year ago. Here's how it's going.
Yeah, a year ago this week, the Inflation Reduction Act, the first major federal climate legislation in U.S. history, it's the first climate legislation, was signed into law. The act is just the first step on the way for the U.S. to meet its climate goals, but it has kicked off a stunning boom in clean energy. And they're not kidding about that. The boom in clean energy is really stunning. Tens of thousands of jobs, billions of dollars in investment, and it is going to continue. We have been.
As I said on the show before, I mean, in the future, you're going to say, imagine that. They used to pay for fuel.
Right. And, it's really amazing the amount of, we're going to do, just in this 2023 is going to have the biggest amount of clean energy investment ever. But in addition to that, it's going to be electric cars, it's going to be cleaner appliances, it's going to be insulation in people's houses, it's going to be electric transmission cables being put in, all kinds of things.
Well, it's a sea stage.
Yeah, unfortunately, from my point of view, it also includes things like nuclear power plants. And I think that's unfortunate because they take 3 times as long as solar or wind that are firmed up with batteries, and they cost 3 times as much. And
well, that's the point. They are so expensive. You're not going to see too many new ones.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of new ones. People are going to understand that these things are very expensive. Okay, I'm going to take us on in this because, as I said, we're way behind schedule. We have an item from Clean Technica and a picture of deforestation. I don't know where that picture was taken, but what do you have for a title?
UK biomass strategy won't stop the destruction of North American forests.
The growing wood pellet industry, driven by UK demand, is damaging some of the most important forests on the North American continent and the biodiversity they support. The UK government has a new biomass strategy, but it's going to do very little to improve the situation.
So the UK is buying wood pellets from places like Arkansas and Alabama.
Exactly. That's what's happening. Okay, again, I'm going to go on. We are kind of behind schedule here. We have a picture of a wind farm, specifically an offshore wind farm. This is an item from Renews, and that picture, by the way, is a rendering, it's not a photograph, of V236-15MW turbines from Vestas.
Doesn't look any different from any other turbine.
Yeah, well, V236 means that the rotor diameter is 236 meters. 236 of them, and the 15 MW means that each one has a capacity of 15 megawatts.
That's a lot.
That is a lot, yeah. There's 10 of them there. That's 150. One of those turbines would power Brattleboro.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, what do you got for title?
Vestas turbine sets world record.
Yeah. Vestas V236-15MW prototype wind turbine set a world record for the most power output by a single unit in 24 hours. The Danish manufacturer's wind turbine racked up 363 megawatt hours in 24 hours. The prototype was installed at the offshore Østerild National Test Center for large wind turbines in Denmark. And it was set up in December of 2022. So.
Right along. We got something coming up for Tuesday, August 15th.
That's right. And what we have is from ZME Science. I don't know what ZME stands for. And we have a picture of solar panels in Italy.
That's what it says. Solar power surges in Europe and is set to double by 2030.
Yeah, the EU is moving fast to deploy solar power in response to the energy crisis. A report by the lobbying group Solar Power Europe found the bloc would have over 400 gigawatts of solar power installed by the end of this decade, almost double the 208 gigawatts of solar power produced today.
8 gigawatts is megawatts.
Yeah, and they're going to have 400 of them. Now, that's the equivalent of having maybe 100 or 120 large nuclear power plants, because the nuclear power plants have a higher capacity factor. But a much higher capacity factor. But even so, this is a lot of solar energy. Okay, the next thing. Oh, this is a nice picture.
Picture of a rice field.
A rice field in Himachal Pradesh. And this is from the BBC.
Back to the future for India's rice farmers.
Yeah, one farmer said, and I quote, "Most of the people from the village are farmers, but with major climate changes, we started facing a lot of problems. Our crops get destroyed because of unseasonable rains or scarcity of water. Hybrid rice and heavy use of fertilizer make things worse. Some farmers are going back to the old ways." And
that's interesting.
Yeah, and northern India had something like 4,000 different types of rice.
4,000? I didn't think that was possible.
And now what they've got, with big companies trying to sell them, it sounds like it's probably GMO rice. And they've got a couple of different types, and they do not stand up well to dry weather or to excessively rainy weather or whatever. And the Indians have stopped export of major types of rice, the cheaper types, as a matter of fact. But, this is climate change and big corporations destroying the rice. Now we have a picture of Montana, and probably this might be the most important story for the United States this month, and it comes from CNN.
Kind of a pretty picture.
That's a pretty picture. That's western Montana. Yeah, eastern Montana doesn't have big mountains like that. It's just got prairie. Okay.
Montana judge hands young plaintiffs significant victory in a landmark climate trial.
Yeah, we're finally getting to it.
They've been getting publicity because they're young. I mean, they're like high school kids.
Yeah. A Montana judge handed a significant victory to more than a dozen young plaintiffs in the nation's first constitutional climate trial. As extreme weather gets more deadly and scientists warn the climate crisis is eroding our environment and natural resources. Now, what's happened here, Montana is one of a relatively small number of states that have a guarantee of a clean environment in the Constitution.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and so these kids sued, saying that their clean environment was being destroyed.
Okay.
And the judge found on their behalf.
That's interesting.
That's big.
Significant victory is what they are.
This is a significant victory, and it's going to be repeated in other states that have similar laws, And honestly, I think it may be repeated elsewhere in the United States, in places where there aren't similar laws. Okay, we've got a relatively uninteresting story here. We've got a couple of them, actually. This
Picture of a graph with the past and expected spot oil prices.
right.
And they're going to peak and then they're going to kind of flatten out.
Well, they've already peaked. We've
Okay,
hit the peak. The jaggedy areas are the ones that we've already experienced, and then the kind of flat ones going off to the right are the ones that they're projecting. But this is, we have, by the way, got up to Wednesday, August 16th, and this is from Clean Technica.
And it says, and I quote, demand, crude oil prices will increase through 2024 as demand rises above supply, according to the U.S. Energy Information Agency.
Yes. The U.S. Energy Information Administration forecasts higher crude oil prices in the second half of 2023 and into 2024 in its latest short-term energy outlook due to moderate but persistent inventory withdrawals with demand exceeding supply. Now, I want to point out those lines going to the right, you can see that there's a vertical dashed line at July of 2023. Those lines are going up, but they're going up very gradually. So what they're saying is they don't expect big changes in demand. They don't expect sudden shortages. They don't expect the price to go way down or way up. They expect that
it's just pretty much leveled off.
It's going to be a slow, constant rise. That's what they're claiming. Okay, so in 1972, when the oil crisis was developing, they also didn't expect a big change in demand. And
so a lot of that picture is projected.
That picture is projected, and you know, one of the things is they're not expecting weird things to happen. And you know, Russia's invasion of Ukraine was a weird thing.
For sure.
And I mean, if you look at this graph, you'll see that there's a big dip about a quarter of the way in.
Yep.
And that big dip came because of COVID. And then there's a big rise after January of 2022, and that was the invasion of Ukraine that nobody was really ready for. Without that kind of thing happening, they're just saying kind of a slow rise. All right, we're going to go on to our next item. And
There's an offshore rig.
yeah, it's an offshore oil rig. This is from CNBC.
What's CNBC? Canadian NBC?
No, it's commercial NBC.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like it's NBC, but with a strong focus on the stock market and industry and things like that.
So stuff on business.
Yeah, but business. Yeah. What do you have for title?
$multi-billion carbon bubble? Question mark. Climate chief warns world leaders over fossil fuel plants.
That is, the word is multi-trillion. I'm saying that so people understand. We're not talking about M's and B's here. We're talking about the T word.
This is big bucks.
This is big bucks. The head of the IPCC, that is the international, interglobal, the IPCC, everybody knows that, says the world leaders face a multi-trillion-dollar threat by pushing plans for fossil fuel production. These people are still building fossil fuel infrastructure.
Well,
and
the stranded assets.
That's right. The UN Climate Panel estimated that fossil fuel investors could be at risk for losing $1 trillion to $4 trillion if governments limit global warming. And guess what? That's what they're going to do because they have to, because otherwise we don't survive. So my advice to everybody, and bear in mind I'm not a financial advisor, is really be careful that you don't buy something that is going to turn out to be a stranded asset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So according to this, we're all going to die, but we're all going to die rich.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't mind saying we all die, but we all die rich if we could add on to that. But we're not going to die soon. But you know, it's like, or we're not going to. Let's not go into that. Okay. Now we have our.
There's a picture of the Colorado River here.
We do indeed, and this is from CNN, and this is good news.
Feds ease water cuts on the Colorado River after a blockbuster winter.
Yeah, this is a blockbuster winter, and guess what? The only part of California that still has drought is the southeast corner, and the southeast corner is right in the path of that hurricane, and it's going to get a lot of rain. Feds ease. Federal officials are easing water restrictions on the Colorado River starting next year. After above average winter snowpack helped it lift water levels at the nation's two largest reservoirs. Lake Mead has shown, quote, significant improvement, end quote, because of the good winter and water conservation efforts by states. Now, the interesting thing about this, to me, is that the states are not immediately cashing in on this. Arizona has said that it's going to try to maintain the water limitations as they are. And the reason is because it wants to build the Colorado River and those reservoirs back to normal. Because
we've seen pictures of those reservoirs and they are down.
They are way down. The feds are saying, well, we can take a little more water out because the reservoirs are up. But I want to tell everybody, they're not up all that much. They're up from like 23% of normal to 27% of normal. Yeah, that's a big improvement. But it's a tiny improvement. They have a long ways to go. So, I want to tell you that was our last story. We were behind schedule, but we finished on schedule.
Very good. We had some good stuff this week.
Yeah, and I want to suggest to everybody on our last slide that they have a sensationally relaxing week. I'm not sure how you can have a sensation and be relaxed at the same time, but that's the whole point of saying that. And now it's time for Tom and me to say goodbye. I'm waving. Tom's waving. Tom,
no cat.
Please, no cat. Tom's cat is either not waving or is waving in
a nap. I can see his paws.
Imagine that. He's taking a nap and it's the middle of the day.
Amazing, huh?
Why would a cat do that?
Because he's a cat.
Because he's a cat, yeah. Gray foxes.
Well, I got one thing to say. You don't come back now and see us, you hear?
That's right. I was going to say gray foxes nap in the middle of the day too, and we've had those on Elliott Street. Okay, bye everybody.